Stangibelisco here with a little more cogitation, rumination, just general dreaming about those Federal Aviation Administration regulations dealing with tethered balloons and kites. With a balloon, sometimes they call it a moored balloon, M-O-O-R-E-D, tethered, or captive balloon. The requirements for that are quite strict. They need to have a deflation device in case it should break loose from its moorings, which is particularly important if the tether is conductive, because if that conductive wire comes down somewhere where there's some high voltage, maybe hundreds of miles away, it could electrocute someone. I mean, there are a lot of dangers with this kind of an antenna, but the Federal Aviation Administration is primarily concerned with the danger that it poses to aircraft. As for kites, obviously I'm missing something because children are flying kites. There are kites manufactured by companies devoted exclusively to that purpose, and they wouldn't exist if the regulations were strictly enforced. So one has to wonder what exactly is going to be regulated and what is not. How are they going to find out if you are flying a captive balloon at night out in the middle of nowhere? I mean, what are they going to go sending spies looking for them? There are interesting ways to get lights on radio antennas with captive balloons and someday, and kites. I'll get into that someday. I may already have, but obviously I'm missing the fact that because the laws are unenforceable, I don't know why, but they're not being fully enforced, because if they were, there'd be no kids flying kites and no companies making them. So I'm going to focus on kites only because balloons are vastly more dangerous. But nevertheless, there is a big difference between an ordinary kite or tethered balloon and one for ham radio, and that is that the tether is conductive. And if it comes down, for example, I couldn't do that in my neighborhood with a kite or a balloon and be considered sane, because the wind will die down, the kite will come down, a bird will fly into the balloon and pop it, and that wire will come down on something where it has no business coming down, like a power line, a street where you can get tangled up in the wheels of a car. It's just innumerable problems and dangers associated with this type of antenna, not just to aircraft. So I should point out that if you're going to try this, do it at your own risk. Don't say that I told you to do it. Because as I get older and more conservative and more skittish in my ways, I become more reluctant to do things like that. And I'm particularly reluctant to do it because this QTH is not suited for it, and I never plan to move from here. So maybe I'm just barking up a tree for the sake of barking. That's what, well, that's a whole other video too. Why do dogs bark incessantly when they're cooped up on a chain in a tiny little cage and there's nowhere for them to go and nothing for them to do? Why on earth would a dog bark? I would. Corny as it may be, nutty as it may be, the fact is the FAA is not completely insane, but they are not enforcing the regulations strictly as they read in the link I provided in that other video. So where from here? It's up to you. Stangibelisco signing off from the black holes of Dakota Territory, United States of Antipodes. Until next time, 73, which means best regards in ham radio jargon, and so long, which means to me, da-da-da-da-da-da.